Hey everybody, Aaron Rift here from NoDQ.com to talk about the biggest matches in wrestling history that never happened. I asked people on Facebook and Twitter for their thoughts, a list of their matches. I got a lot of responses here, so let's go through some of them right now. First off, Shawn Michaels versus Eddie Guerrero. This is a match that never happened. At the time that Eddie Guerrero was starting to become a huge superstar, Shawn Michaels had been out with his injury and he was out of the picture. By the time Shawn Michaels came back, Eddie Guerrero was established on SmackDown. Shawn Michaels was established on Raw. So the two of them didn't have the opportunity to interact. And then unfortunately, there was the death of Eddie Guerrero, and we never got to see that Shawn Michaels versus Eddie Guerrero match. No doubt it would have been a classic. I mean, Shawn Michaels and Eddie Guerrero, two of the best performers ever. I think they would have torn the house down. So it's very unfortunate that we never got to see that match. Next up, NWO versus DX. In my opinion, this was a huge missed opportunity by WWE, especially in 2002. You know, going back to the Attitude Era, everybody always talked about NWO versus DX. That was the big fantasy match, and it would be interesting because you have members of the Clique involved with both groups. So, which side would they be on? Would Shawn Michaels be with the NWO, or would he be with DX? You just don't know. Same thing with X-Pac and Kevin Nash and the rest of them. And finally, in 2002, you had a period where the NWO came into WWE. WWE owned the rights to the NWO, so they could have done a Team NWO versus Team DX match. You know, something like that at Survivor Series would have been huge in Madison Square Garden. But unfortunately, it was just not meant to be. Kevin Nash had the quad injury, and the NWO was disbanded. And then the next week, Shawn Michaels and Triple H came out with DX. Triple H turned on Shawn Michaels, and the rest is history. But it just sucks that we never got to see that match. WWE definitely could have done it. Even during the Alliance storyline, during the Invasion, they could have done something like that. Big missed opportunity, in my opinion. Steve Austin versus Brock Lesnar. This is a match that almost happened. In 2002, WWE was booking a match where Brock Lesnar would beat Steve Austin in a King of the Ring qualifier. Steve Austin did not like the idea of having to put over Brock Lesnar on free television. He felt it was a waste of a possible big pay-per-view match, and he walked out on the company. And we never got to see that match, and Steve Austin retired less than a year later. This is a match I think that a lot of fans would have loved to have seen. Just two badass ass kickers in there tearing each other apart. Would have been great stuff. Here's a match that I felt that really would have been an all-time classic if we got to see it. Bret Hart versus Kurt Angle. I remember back in 2002, 2003, Kurt Angle actually said if he could wrestle anybody, he would want to wrestle Bret Hart. And Bret Hart, unfortunately, you know, he had the stroke, and he just couldn't do it anymore. And he told Kurt Angle, you know, I'm sorry, I can't do it. But if Bret Hart had not had his problems and didn't have the concussion and the stroke, I think we would have seen Bret Hart come back to WWE in the 2002, 2003 period. And I think we would have seen Bret Hart versus Kurt Angle. I think the temptation to have a match with Kurt Angle would have been enough for Bret Hart to bury the hatchet with Vince sooner and just come back and go back to having great matches and doing what he loves to do. And I think Bret Hart and Kurt Angle would have been one of the greatest technical matches of all time, and I think most would agree with that. Steve Austin versus CM Punk. This is a match that has been talked about for years because you have this basic idea. CM Punk is straight edge, doesn't drink at all. Stone Cold Steve Austin's a beer drinker, so you have that natural little rivalry right there. And CM Punk is a trash talker, and so is Steve Austin. So they really gel well together, and they would probably have a great match. But unfortunately, it hasn't happened up to this point, and who knows? We might get to see it sometime down the line. Maybe WrestleMania 30. You never know. Never say never. Unfortunately, Steve Austin's he's pushing 50 now, so I think time is running out. But you know what? Steve Austin is in tremendous physical shape. He's doing the movies. He's keeping himself in good shape. So I would not rule it out, and maybe one day we will get to see this dream match. Speaking of matches that we haven't seen but we might get to see one day, John Cena versus The Undertaker at WrestleMania. Yes, we have seen John Cena versus The Undertaker before, but that was when John Cena was breaking into WWE. In my opinion, this is the absolute biggest match that WWE could do, and it's the biggest match that they haven't done. John Cena versus The Undertaker at WrestleMania. And if they really wanted to make things interesting, they could make this match an I Quit match at WrestleMania with the streak on the line. That would be something else. But just a straight up match between these two. I mean, let's face it, The Undertaker doesn't have that many options for opponents. There's not really a whole lot of guys that are believable that you believe could actually end the streak in a storyline. But John Cena, he's the Superman. He has the reputation for being unstoppable. So that would be an epic encounter. And to do it at WrestleMania 30 would be the perfect setting. Undertaker versus Sting. This is a match that has been fantasized about for almost 2 decades now. I mean, it's been talked about. I remember in the mid-1990s, Mad Magazine even posted a little article where they had Undertaker and Sting. And I think, because Undertaker was like the loyal WWE superstar, Sting was the loyal WCW superstar. I mean, I think a lot of fans just paired those two together because, their careers ran parallel in their respective companies. And, Undertaker was all in black and Sting did the Crow gimmick all in black. So a lot of fans definitely fantasized about this match. And a couple of years ago, when Sting's contract was up with TNA, there was all these rumors that he would come to WrestleMania and face The Undertaker, and I guess Sting was actually close to making a deal, but it just didn't work out. In my opinion, I think at this point it's unlikely we'll ever see this match, which is unfortunate, but if Sting ever does come into WWE for one match, I'd love to see it be against Undertaker. I think Undertaker would be the perfect opponent. And even though this match has been done several times, one match that fans never got to see was Hulk Hogan versus Ric Flair at WrestleMania, and specifically WrestleMania 8. It just didn't make sense to not do this match. When Ric Flair came into WWE, everyone wanted to see Hogan versus Flair. And they did do a bunch of house show matches. They did a televised tag team match. They went in a Royal Rumble against each other, but we were robbed of that epic Hulk Hogan Ric Flair match at WrestleMania. And WWE decided to go in a different direction, and just very unfortunate because fans missed out on a great match. Steve Austin versus John Cena. This is a match between two of the biggest stars ever. Steve Austin, the biggest star of his era. John Cena, the biggest star of his era. I think the chances of this match happening are unlikely. I think if Steve Austin comes back for one more match, it's more likely he'll go against somebody like CM Punk. But, I mean, that match has box office written all over it. And it would be quite the match, although I'm quite certain that John Cena would be the heel in this match. But it would be unbelievable. I think the heat for that match would just be at the top tier of any match of all time. Shawn Michaels versus The Rock. This is another match that fans have been fantasizing about for years. And it never happened, and it was kind of interesting that it never happened because both guys were in the company at the same time. And I think there were rumors at one point that they were going to have a match, and there's all these rumors that The Rock had issues with Shawn Michaels, and there was some kind of beef between the two of them. The fact is, I think that the opportunity just didn't come along because I think if there were any issues between those two, they would have put him aside for the sake of business. And Shawn Michaels versus The Rock would have been huge business. So I just think, things didn't work out storyline-wise, and Shawn Michaels was gone for a lot of the time that The Rock was on top. And then when Shawn Michaels came back, The Rock was phasing himself out of WWE. So, the cards just did not align in this case. All right, getting down to the top matches. I mean, these are the ones that I would say are the biggest matches that haven't happened. Hulk Hogan versus John Cena. I think it's even bigger than Steve Austin versus John Cena because Hulk Hogan is similar to John Cena. He's the Superman. He's the guy that appeals to all the kids. So the two superhero characters of their eras going at it, and two different generations. That would be something else. And the funny thing is that Hulk Hogan and John Cena did have some interaction in 2005, and WWE could have done that match, and for whatever reason, it just didn't happen. So, once again, it's an unfortunate situation. That match would have been huge box office, no question. All right, number 2, Steve Austin versus Hulk Hogan. This match fans have been talking about for years, going back to WCW versus WWE, the Monday Night Wars. Hulk Hogan was the top star in WCW. Steve Austin was the top star in WWE. And Steve Austin, in ECW, he did the promo mocking Hulk Hogan. I mean, that would have been a perfect storyline. And some think that we should have seen Steve Austin versus Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 18 instead of Hogan versus The Rock. It just sucks we didn't get to see that match. I think the closest we got was the Raw before WrestleMania 18. It was Hogan and the NWO against Steve Austin and The Rock, and for a brief period, Hogan and Austin were in the ring against each other. But that's about it. That's really all we got to see out of Hogan versus Austin. And then in 2005 at the Raw Homecoming, I think Hulk Hogan came out and he teased a match with Steve Austin, and it just didn't happen. And I think that was more of Steve Austin not really being interested in coming back. Steve Austin has been public about it. He said that he didn't feel that a match with Hulk Hogan would be any good, and that's why he didn't come back. So clearly, Steve Austin doesn't want to come back for the money. He wants to come back to have a great match and give people the old Stone Cold. And I guess he feels that he wouldn't be able to deliver with Hulk Hogan. And finally, in my opinion, the number one biggest match that never took place: Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Goldberg. There were all the comparisons between Austin and Goldberg. Goldberg looks very much like Steve Austin with the bald head, the goatee, black trunks, black boots. But besides that, they were very different. Steve Austin was all about the promos and all about the character. Goldberg was just about going out there and destroying people, beating them with the spear and the jackhammer. But in 1998, that was a match that everybody was talking about. What would happen if Steve Austin and Goldberg faced each other? And WWE could have done this match in 2001 if they were willing to buy out Goldberg's Time Warner contract. They could have done that match in 2001, and it would have been possibly the biggest box office match of all time. I mean, you look at the Invasion pay-per-view that year. It did a huge pay-per-view buy rate, and that was without any of the major stars like Goldberg. So if they had done Steve Austin versus Goldberg during the Invasion period, I mean, it would have definitely set records that probably would have never been broken. And Steve Austin ended up retiring. Goldberg came to WWE, and there was another opportunity there to do it, and they just didn't do it. Steve Austin was retired; he was done, and Goldberg's run in WWE didn't work out all that well, and he ended up leaving, and that was the end of it. But I mean, for a few years there, myself and others were getting our hopes up that maybe we would get to see that match, but it just wasn't meant to be. Alright, that'll do it for this video. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you guys think. What other matches do you think should have taken place? Matches that I did not mention here today. Leave a comment at youtube.com/NoDQCW, and stay tuned to NoDQ.com for the very latest in WWE and TNA.